Alien Girl offered the human a simple thanks, only later revealing why the council stood for him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The heat radiating off the refinery floor shimmered like a mirage as Ethan Cole crouched beside a trembling conduit panel, the metal warm enough to sting through his gloves. Lights flickered overhead, throwing stripes of white and violet across his face, while the air tasted faintly of ozone and overheated circuitry. The sensor readouts on his wrist unit pulsed a soft amber, warning of a pressure spike somewhere deep in the pipe maze. Ethan exhaled slowly, the breath catching in his throat from the dry, recycled air. This wasn't even supposed to be his shift. He'd picked it up because someone else called in sick, and because rent didn't pay itself. He tugged the panel loose, the screws rattling like coins in a jar, and heat billowed from the exposed components. The refinery hummed around him, a steady mechanical heartbeat, the kind of place no one noticed unless something went wrong. And something was going wrong. A soft footstep tapped behind him, barely audible over the machinery. Ethan glanced back, expecting another tech, but instead saw a shimmer of silver-blue skin catching the overhead glow. The alien girl stood a few paces away, her eyes reflecting the warning lights like they held tiny twin suns. She didn't speak at first. She simply watched him with a stillness that made the air feel heavier. Ethan wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and forced a crooked smile. Don't come too close. This thing's hotter than it looks. She blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. Then, in a voice quiet enough to nearly disappear beneath the machinery, she said, "Thank you." Ethan frowned lightly. For what? I haven't even fixed it yet. But she didn't explain. Instead, she inclined her head, a gesture small but strangely formal, like she was returning something owed. Her silver-blue skin caught the reflection of the glowing conduit, giving her an almost luminescent outline before she stepped back into the dimmer light of the walkway. Ethan watched her go, confusion tugging at him, then returned to the problematic conduit. A tiny adjustment, a shift of pressure, a reset of the coolant feed, mundane work, nothing heroic. Still, that soft, "thank you," accompanied every motion of his hands. It didn't fit the moment. It felt heavier, more deliberate, more aware. He sealed the panel and tested the line again. Stable. For now. As he stood, wiping the dust off his knees, he caught a glimpse of silver blue turning the corner at the far end of the corridor. She didn't look back. Ethan had no idea why an alien girl would stop in the middle of a refinery just to thank him. And he had no clue that somewhere above this industrial deck, behind soundproof doors and crystalline walls, a council of powerful figures would one day rise to their feet because of the very same man now brushing dust from his gloves, unaware his life had already shifted by a single quiet word. The next morning the refinery felt different, though Ethan Cole could not explain why. The usual hum of machinery filled the high metal corridors, vibrating through the floor panels in a steady rhythm, but there was a subtle tension in the air, like the quiet before a system alarm. Ethan adjusted the strap of his toolkit over his shoulder and walked toward Section C, where a coolant pump had been acting up for weeks. As he passed reflective panels, he caught his own expression, a slight furrow in his brow he had not realized he was carrying. That quiet moment yesterday, that soft thank you from the silver-blue alien girl, kept replaying in his mind. Workers moved around him, some nodding, some focused on their data pads, all going about their routines without noticing anything unusual, which made the small details stand out even more. People kept glancing in his direction. Not long looks, not obvious ones, but quick flickers of attention, as if his presence suddenly mattered in a place where he had always been invisible. He brushed it off at first, tightening a bolt and listening to the gentle click beneath his wrench. But when he finished calibrating the pump, he noticed another odd thing. A supervisor he had never met was waiting near the walkway railing. The supervisor offered a polite greeting, the kind reserved for higher-ranked staff, not maintenance technicians. Ethan answered quietly, unsure why he was being acknowledged at all. The supervisor hesitated before speaking again. "If you need anything today, Technician Cole, let us know. Then the supervisor walked away, leaving Ethan holding a wrench and a puzzled silence. He shook his head and moved on. Maybe someone had confused him with another technician. Maybe it was nothing. At the end of the shift, he headed toward the tram that carried workers to the residential levels. As he stepped onto the platform, he noticed a faint shimmer of silver blue near the entry threshold. She was there again. The alien girl stood with her hands folded, her posture calm but purposeful, the overhead lights reflecting softly along the edges of her skin. When she saw him, she lifted her chin slightly, an acknowledgement that felt almost ceremonial. Ethan slowed, unsure whether to approach. She closed the distance instead, her voice carrying just enough to reach him over the tram's low hum. I hope your hands are healing. Ethan glanced at his palms, the faint redness already fading. They are fine. You did not have to come check on me. Her eyes held a quiet intensity. I did. It was such a simple statement, carefully spoken, but it landed with unexpected weight. Before Ethan could respond, the tram doors chimed open, and passengers filed inside. She stepped aside, making a path for him, but her gaze remained steady. Something in it felt like a promise or maybe a warning. Ethan boarded, finding a seat near the window, and as the tram pulled away, he saw her still standing on the platform, watching him leave with an expression he could not decipher. The refinery lights blurred into streaks as the tram gained speed, and Ethan leaned back, unsure why his chest felt tight with questions. He had no way of knowing that the quiet attention he had received from strangers, the unexpected politeness from a supervisor, and the presence of the silver-blue girl were all threads of the same unseen current that had already begun to shift the course of his life. The refinery's artificial daylight shifted toward evening tones as Ethan Cole made his way back to Section C for one last systems check. The long corridor hummed with familiar machinery, but beneath that steady rhythm he sensed something quieter, something subtle, like a change in air pressure before a storm. Workers greeted him again with those brief, respectful nods, the kind normally reserved for senior staff. Ethan felt each one like a tap on the shoulder, reminding him that the day was not unfolding the way a normal day should. Even the scanners at the access gate chirped a softer tone when reading his badge, as if the system itself had decided to treat him differently. He tried to shake off the feeling. Nothing had changed. He was still a maintenance technician earning hourly pay and living in a dorm-style unit, with a kitchenette barely large enough for a coffee mug. He tightened a valve, listened for the soft click, and marked the repair as complete. Routine. Predictable. Normal. Except nothing felt normal. When his wrist unit pinged with an unexpected request to report to the observation deck, he froze mid-step. No technician was ever summoned there. That level was reserved for overseers and visiting officials, people who spoke softly and made decisions that never trickled down to workers like him. Still, the request displayed his name, his badge number, and an access code he had never seen. The elevator ride upward felt impossibly long. Glass walls revealed the sweep of the refinery, a lattice of glowing pipelines and wide steel corridors stretching out beneath him. As the elevator doors opened, a cool draft drifted across his face. The observation deck was quiet, filled with soft white lighting and smooth panels that reflected his silhouette as if he were standing inside a polished shell. Then he saw her. The silver-blue alien girl stood near the wide window, her hands clasped gently in front of her, her posture composed but not rigid. Light from the distant star filtered across her features, softening the edges of her expression. She turned when Ethan stepped out of the elevator, her eyes locking on his with a steadiness that felt purposeful. You came, she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Ethan cleared his throat, wondering if he should stand straighter or apologize for being out of place. I received a message. I thought it might be a mistake. She shook her head once. It was not a mistake. There was something different about her now. Something centered and assured, as if she had stepped into a role she had been holding back. She studied him for a moment, her gaze moving to the faint marks on his hands. You did not have to fix the conduit yesterday, she said softly. Most would have walked away. Ethan let out a quiet breath. It was my job. I did what anyone would do. A subtle change crossed her features, not disappointment, but something like understanding mixed with a quiet resolve. Not everyone chooses to help when no one is watching. Ethan felt his pulse skip. The room felt larger suddenly. as if her words had shifted the space around them. She stepped closer, not invading his space, just closing enough distance that he could see the faint, iridescent sheen along her skin. "There are things you do not yet know," she said. "Things about why I thank you, and why others are beginning to look at you differently." Ethan swallowed gently, unsure what to say. The machinery far below rumbled like distant thunder, steady and low. She met his eyes again, her expression steady and sincere. "Before anything else happens, you deserve the truth." Her voice held no fear, no hesitation, only certainty. Ethan stood still, knowing instinctively that whatever she would reveal next was already pulling his life off its familiar rails, guiding it towards something far beyond maintenance shifts and coolant valves, something he had never imagined would involve him at all. The observation deck felt suspended between worlds, half refinery steel and half quiet starlight, as Ethan Cole waited for the silver-blue alien girl to speak. She stepped closer to the window, her reflection merging with the glow of distant machinery below, and for a moment she seemed carved from the same light that edged the horizon. "My name is Sira Valoon," she said at last, her voice carrying a gentle resonance that made the wide room feel smaller. Ethan nodded slowly, unsure whether to introduce himself again or simply listen. Something about the stillness in her posture told him she was gathering words with great care. "Yesterday," she continued, "when you repaired the conduit, you prevented a reactor imbalance that could have spread heat through the entire lower sector." Ethan blinked in surprise. It was a minor leak. The sensor barely flagged it. She lifted her gaze to him, her expression calm, but unwavering. It was not minor. It was simply overlooked by others. Ethan felt the elevator hum somewhere behind him, a faint vibration through the floor, grounding him as he tried to process her meaning. Before he could speak, Sira rested her hands lightly against the railing, the faint sheen on her skin catching the soft interior glow. "There is something you must understand," she said. "In my culture, the way one behaves when unseen reveals the truth of their character." Ethan shifted his weight, the metal beneath his boots cool and firm. "I was just doing my job." "No," she said gently. "You chose to act, and that choice reached farther than you know." Her words landed with a quiet firmness that made Ethan's chest tighten. She turned slightly, her profile illuminated by a halo of reflected starlight. "There are members of our oversight group observing this facility," she said. "They watch how different species cooperate in shared environments." Ethan ran a hand along the back of his neck, feeling the faint warmth left from the climb upward. "Oversight group? You mean inspectors?" Sira hesitated, then shook her head. "More than inspectors." She took a careful breath, as if deciding how much to say. "I am part of that group. My presence here is not as a visitor. I am here to evaluate interactions, decisions, and the ways each person behaves when no authority is watching." Ethan stared at her, the realization settling slowly, like dust drifting through a sunbeam. "So yesterday, you were evaluating me?" "I was observing," she said softly. "But what you did was not performed for recognition. That matters." She looked down for a heartbeat, then back at him, her eyes steady with sincerity. "Ethan Cole, you acted with integrity when it would have been easier to walk away. That is rare." The machinery far below pulsed with warm light, its steady cadence like the heartbeat of the entire facility. Ethan exhaled slowly, still absorbing the idea that a simple repair had drawn this kind of attention. "Sira," he said, trying to find the right words, "I am not special. I fix things. I try to make sure others stay safe. That is it." A faint, almost wistful smile touched her lips. Sometimes the simplest truths are the ones that matter most. She stepped away from the railing and moved closer, her presence calm and grounding. "You deserve to know," she said quietly, "that your actions yesterday were reported to the upper council. They asked who you were." Ethan felt his heartbeat shift, the rhythm catching for a moment. "Why would they ask about me?" Sira held his gaze, her expression full of quiet meaning. "Because your choice revealed something important. And for the council, that is reason enough to pay attention." She paused, her voice softening like the dimming lights around them. "This is only the beginning of what I must tell you." The quiet hum of the observation deck settled into a softer rhythm as Ethan Cole absorbed Sira Valoon's words. She stood before him with her hands gently clasped, the subtle glow along her silver-blue skin reflecting the ambient lights overhead. For a long moment neither of them spoke, as if the room itself held its breath. When Syrah finally continued, her voice was calm, but carried the weight of something carefully guarded. "There is another reason I came to you," she said. "Not as an evaluator, not as a representative of any council, but as someone who has watched you long before yesterday." Ethan felt a slight shift in the air, a faint cool draft sweeping across the polished floor. "Watched me?" he echoed, unsure whether to feel unsettled or curious. Syrah nodded. "Our group has been observing interactions in this facility for many cycles. Behavior patterns, cooperation, responses to pressure, the way different species treat those they believe have less influence or importance." Ethan almost laughed, though it came out quiet and unsure. "Then you must know I'm not exactly high-ranking material. I'm just trying to keep things running." "That is why your choices matter," Syrah said softly. She stepped closer to the center of the room, her silhouette framed by the wide transparent window that displayed the glowing lattice of pipes below. "Those with authority often behave well because they fear consequence. But those without power reveal who they are in simple actions." Ethan leaned lightly against the railing, the metal cool beneath his palm. "So yesterday was a test?" "No," she corrected gently. "Yesterday was a confirmation." She looked down for a moment, her expression thoughtful, before meeting his eyes again. "There have been tensions between our species in recent cycles. Some believe humans act impulsively or without regard for the greater good. Others believe humans display resilience and compassion in ways no measurement can quantify." Ethan felt his pulse shift as her words settled deeper. "And I fall into which group?" Syrah's gaze softened. "You showed compassion without expecting recognition. You placed safety over convenience. You acted with integrity when no one was watching." She lifted her hand slightly, as if illustrating the point. "Those actions carry weight in my culture." The lights on the deck dimmed briefly, transitioning into the evening cycle. A soft blue hue washed over the room, merging with the natural gleam of Syrah's skin. Ethan could see the faint reflection of his own face beside hers in the window, his features lined with curiosity and a hint of disbelief. "Syrah," he said quietly, "I did not do anything extraordinary." "Extraordinary does not always look like heroism," she replied. "Sometimes it looks like a technician kneeling beside a failing conduit, choosing safety for others over comfort for himself." Ethan looked away for a moment, trying to steady the strange feeling building in his chest. "So why tell me all this now?" Syrah exhaled softly, a sound almost like a sigh carried by the distant hum of the machinery. "Because the council has asked for a formal evaluation of your character. They want to understand why someone with no incentive still acts with such consistency. And before they make their decision, I wanted you to hear the truth from me." Ethan straightened slowly, the weight of her words landing with surprising clarity. "What decision?" Syrah held his gaze, her eyes reflecting both earnestness and something more difficult to define. "Whether your presence should be brought before them. Whether you should be acknowledged." Ethan's breath caught, not from fear, but from the enormity of the idea. A maintenance technician being evaluated by a governing council felt impossible, almost surreal. Syrah stepped closer, her voice quieter now, steadier. "I believe they are beginning to see what I saw first." The machinery far below pulsed gently, like a deep, steady heartbeat stretching out across the refinery. Ethan stood very still, sensing that whatever came next would change far more than just the way people nodded at him in hallways. The soft blue glow of the observation deck settled into deeper hues as the evening cycle progressed, tracing faint shadows along the curved walls, while Ethan Cole tried to make sense of everything Syrah Valoon had just revealed. She stood a short distance from him now, her posture composed but touched by something quieter, almost like concern. The distant machinery vibrated through the floor in steady pulses, grounding him as he searched for the right words. "Syrah," he said slowly, "I fix pipes and replace filters. I do not understand why a council would care about anything I do." Syrah turned toward him fully, her silver blue features reflecting the ambient glow as if she were lit from within. "That is exactly why they care," she said. "The council has spent years watching what large systems and advanced technologies reveal about other species. But it is small decisions that show values. And values shape alliances." Ethan let out a long breath, the kind that left a faint fog on the transparent window beside him. He glanced down at the refinery far below, the lattice of glowing pipelines forming a map he knew like the back of his hand. He had always believed his world existed only inside that grid of metal and light. Now, suddenly, he was being told that people far above him were watching, evaluating, discussing his name in rooms he would never have imagined entering. So what happens now? Ethan asked quietly. Syrah stepped closer, enough that he could see the soft shimmer on her skin each time she inhaled. The council requested a personal account, she said. They want to understand your reasoning, your instinct, and whether your choices are consistent with what you did yesterday. They believe your behavior could influence broader policy on human cooperation. Ethan blinked, unsure whether to laugh or panic. I was fixing a conduit, not negotiating treaties. A small, gentle curve touched the corner of Syrah's lips. Integrity does not require a stage, she replied. For a moment the room felt more still than before, as if her words had settled into the very air. She folded her hands lightly in front of her. There is something else you should know. When I first approached you after the repair, my role was not to test you, but to confirm a suspicion. Ethan felt his pulse shift. What suspicion? Syrah held his gaze, her eyes steady and clear. That a human technician with no status, no audience, and nothing to gain would still choose to do what was right. That is rare, Ethan, even among my own people. The machinery far below hummed like a distant heartbeat as Ethan absorbed her words. So what am I supposed to do? He asked softly. Just answer their questions? Not yet, Syrah said. Before the council meets you, they want a direct observation of how you interact under pressure, not danger, she added immediately, reading the flicker of tension in his posture. Only a decision that reveals how you weigh responsibility and empathy. Ethan rubbed his thumb along the railing, feeling the faint texture in the metal. You mean another test? Syrah shook her head gently. Not a test. An opportunity to show them who you already are. She stepped closer, her voice quiet but certain. And I will be there. Not as an evaluator. As someone who believes in the outcome. Ethan met her eyes, surprised by the sincerity in them. The hum of the refinery faded into a softer backdrop as a new understanding settled between them. Whatever this next step was, he would not be facing it alone. The lights dimmed slightly as the night cycle fully engaged, and in that soft glow Syrah spoke once more. The council has asked to see if your choices remain the same when the decision is not simple. Tomorrow, they will watch. Ethan inhaled slowly, the weight of those words settling firmly into his chest. Something in the air shifted, quiet and certain. His life was no longer running along the tracks he once knew. It was already turning towards something larger, shaped by a truth he had never expected. Someone had seen him, and it mattered. The refinery shifted into its morning cycle with a soft rise in light, a pale gold hue spreading across the metal walkways as Ethan Cole walked beside Syrah Valoon. The hum beneath their feet felt steadier today, almost calm, yet Ethan sensed a quiet tension woven into each step. Syrah guided him toward a less traveled corridor near the central monitoring station, her movements smooth and deliberate. She seemed more focused than the day before, as if carrying something unspoken. Ethan adjusted the strap of his toolkit, though he had been told he would not need it for whatever the council planned to observe. You said they want to see how I act when the decision is not simple, he said softly. What does that mean exactly? Syrah slowed, turning toward him with an expression that held both reassurance and something more solemn. It means they want to understand what guides you, not your skills, your values. Ethan nodded, though the explanation settled heavily on his thoughts. He had never considered his values something anyone would review, let alone a governing council. As they reached the monitoring station, Syrah lifted her wrist device, its surface glowing faintly with layered symbols he could not read. A wide viewing panel flickered to life behind her, displaying a real-time feed of the refinery's lower levels. Ethan stepped closer. Workers passed through the corridors, moving equipment and checking gauges. Everything looked normal, except for one detail. A junior technician near a coolant console seemed stuck, holding a panel he could not quite secure back into place. Why are we watching this? Ethan asked, though he could already feel an ember of concern forming. Syrah glanced at him gently. Because the council wants to see your instinct when you observe a situation from afar, not when you are in the heart of it. Ethan frowned slightly. If he needs help, Someone should go down there. Someone will, she replied. But they want to see who he receives help from first. The technician on the screen hesitated again, glancing around the empty corridor. His hands trembled slightly as he attempted to align the panel. Ethan recognized the signs of strain, the frustration of feeling alone in a task that was quickly becoming overwhelming. He remembered being that technician once, maybe twice, perhaps more often than he wanted to admit. He is new, Ethan murmured. You can tell by the way he positions the anchor clips. Sierra watched him quietly. Yes. Ethan's chest tightened. He just needs someone to steady the frame so he can lock it into place. Sierra waited, her gaze steady. The technician on the screen dropped the tool, bending quickly to retrieve it. The corridor remained empty. No supervisor. No coworker. No one who knew what to look for. Ethan exhaled. Can we go help him? Sierra tilted her head gently. You were not asked to intervene. Ethan turned toward her fully. Does that matter? He needs someone. Her expression softened, the faint blue sheen of her skin catching the light. That is what the council wanted to know. Ethan stepped back in surprise. This is the test. Sierra nodded once. A simple dilemma. You were told this is an observation. You were told you would not need your toolkit. You were given no instruction. They wanted to see whether you would prioritize protocol or compassion when neither option was clearly stated. Ethan stared at the young technician on the screen, struggling, alone, his movements increasingly uncertain. Without another word, Ethan grabbed the toolkit at his side and started toward the exit corridor. Sierra followed, her voice quiet but warm. Ethan Cole, you have already given them their answer. Ethan did not slow. Maybe, but he still needs help. The machinery vibrated softly underfoot, as steady and familiar as his own pulse, guiding him forward with a clarity that required no counsel and no audience. It required only a choice he already knew how to make. Ethan Cole moved quickly through the corridor, the familiar vibration of the refinery floor guiding his steps, while the soft echo of Sierra Valoon's footsteps followed just behind him. The air shifted from the cool quiet of the upper levels to the warmer industrial breath of the lower sector, carrying the faint scent of heated metal and coolant. He rounded the final corner and saw the young technician still struggling with the loose panel, his hands unsteady, his shoulders tight with the weight of believing no one would notice if he failed. Ethan slowed his pace to avoid startling him. Hold on, he said gently. Let me give you a hand. The technician froze, then turned, eyes wide with a mixture of relief and embarrassment. Ethan knelt beside him, setting his toolkit down with a soft metallic click. You are not doing anything wrong, Ethan said, steadying the frame. This model is tricky. The anchor clips are stiff when the alignment is even a hair off. The younger man nodded, his breath settling as Ethan guided him through the proper angle. The panel slid into place with a smooth, reassuring click. The technician looked at him with visible gratitude. Thank you. I thought I had messed up. Ethan smiled faintly. Everyone struggles the first few times. You just needed another set of hands. Behind them, Sierra watched without interrupting, her expression soft but bright with some quiet understanding. Her silver blue skin reflected the warm glow from the overhead pipes, giving her an almost radiant silhouette in the industrial light. When Ethan rose to his feet, the technician straightened as well, clearly steadier than before. If you ever need help again, Ethan said, just ask. No one gets through this place alone. The younger man nodded, the tension finally melting from his shoulders. As he walked away, Sierra stepped closer to Ethan, her voice quiet, but carrying a depth that made him pause. You acted without hesitation, she said, even knowing the council was observing. Ethan shook his head. I was not thinking about the council. Sierra's eyes softened. Exactly. She motioned gently toward the far end of the hallway. There is something I must show you now. Something the council asked me to reveal only after your choice became clear. Ethan followed her through a series of curved corridors until they reached a lift he had never used. The doors slid open with a soft whisper, revealing a cabin lined with crystalline panels pulsing faintly with blue and white energy. Ethan stepped inside cautiously, feeling the air shift to a cooler temperature as the doors closed behind them. The lift ascended smoothly, passing levels he did not recognize. Sierra stood at his side, her posture poised yet quiet, as if preparing him for something that would alter how he understood everything around him. Ethan, she said gently, There is a truth about me that I could not share until now. He looked at her, waiting. She met his gaze without wavering. My role here is not only as an evaluator. I am a designated member of the upper council, assigned to observe without revealing my status. Ethan felt the air thin for a moment. You mean you were undercover? Sarah nodded once. I needed to see how you acted when no one knew who I was. When your behavior could not benefit you. The lift slowed, a soft chime sounding as they reached a level bathed in cool light that spilled through the opening doors. Sarah's voice softened even more. Now the council wishes to meet you, and they asked me to bring you not as a subject of evaluation, but as someone whose actions have earned their respect. Ethan stepped forward slowly, the quiet glow ahead reflecting across his features. The path before him felt unreal, yet undeniably real, shaped by nothing more than simple choices he had never thought anyone would notice. And beside him, Sarah walked with a calm certainty, as if she had known this moment was waiting for him long before he ever believed it could exist. The chamber beyond the lift opened into a quiet hall washed in soft white light, the kind that carried no shadows, only a calm glow that softened every surface. Ethan Cole stepped forward slowly, his boots making gentle sounds against the polished floor. The air felt cooler here, almost crisp, as if the entire level was separated from the noise and heat of the refinery below. Sarah Valoon walked beside him with a steady grace, her silver-blue skin reflecting the ambient light like liquid glass. Her presence felt different now, not distant or elevated, but certain, as if each step she took confirmed a truth she had carried for a long time. At the end of the hall stood a wide circular room, its walls formed from translucent plates that shimmered faintly with shifting patterns, like distant stars moving behind frosted glass. As Ethan and Sarah entered, a group of figures rose from their seats. They stood with slow, deliberate movement, hands folded respectfully. Their skin tones ranged through soft hues of blue, green, and violet, and their attire bore the intricate geometric lines he had only ever seen on official documents and broadcast screens. Ethan's breath caught. They were the council, the same governing body that oversaw interspecies relations, industrial ethics, and the delicate balance of cooperation across the system. He never imagined standing in the same room with them, let alone being acknowledged by them. Sarah stepped slightly ahead, not to distance herself from Ethan, but to stand beside him like an equal. When she spoke, her voice carried a softness that contrasted with the authority in the room. Honored counselors, she said, I present Ethan Cole. The eldest counselor inclined her head, her expression composed yet warm. We have observed your actions, Ethan Cole. Not merely the repair yesterday, but the pattern of choices made without expectation. Ethan swallowed gently, unsure if speaking would help or hinder. The counselor continued, her voice steady and clear. Many forget that character reveals itself most in moments when no reward is offered. Yet you, without status or recognition, chose to act with integrity. That is a quality that shapes trust across species. Another counselor, taller and with faint green luminescence along his cheeks, stepped forward slightly. The young technician you assisted today, said gently, had been placed intentionally in a moment of uncertainty. You were given no directive, yet you chose compassion. Ethan glanced briefly at Sarah, who met his look with a calm assurance, then returned his gaze to the council. I only did what I thought was right, he said softly. The eldest counselor nodded. And that is why we stand for you, Ethan Cole. Her words settled into the quiet chamber with a weight that did not feel heavy, but grounding. Ethan felt something shift inside him, a realization that what he had always seen as small gestures had resonated far beyond the places he worked. The council stepped back slightly, giving the room a sense of open space once more. Sarah turned toward him fully, her expression gentle, her voice quiet enough that only he could hear. This is why I thank you, she said. Not for the action, but for the truth it revealed. Ethan exhaled slowly, the moment settling into his chest like a steady warmth. He looked around the chamber, then at Sarah, then at the council who had risen for him without expectation. He did not feel larger than before. He simply felt seen. The eldest counselor's final words drifted through the room like a calm breath. Sometimes a single act of sincerity is enough to shift the course of understanding between worlds. Ethan stood in the quiet, feeling the significance of the moment not in its grandeur, but in its simplicity. The soft glow along the walls reflected faintly in Syrah's eyes as she stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. You showed them what humanity looks like, Ethan. And for the first time, they believed it. The chamber held the silence gently, not empty, but full of meaning, the kind that lingered long after words had ceased.